on how to create an effective curriculum vitae and motivation letter. So as we wait for the other participants to have the chance to log into our session, I would like to discuss first the different workshop guidelines and also the program. So for our workshop guidelines, I would like to remind everyone to first remember to mute yourselves at all times. And if you want to say something or ask something, please use the raise hand button and wait to be acknowledged. You are also encouraged to turn on your videos to make this session more interactive and dynamic for all. And if ever you get disconnected, just return to the same link that was provided. And also encourage everyone to take a pen and paper and take note of all of your questions for the open forum at the latter part of the program. And lastly, I also encourage everyone to have fun and learn. So yeah. So just to give you an overview of our program, we expect this session to end in 2 hours and not more than that. So grab your snacks, grab your water, and grab your pens to prepare. First, you would have a welcoming by our IFSA Vice President, then a short introduction on the hands-on activity, then we would have the group activity, then a group presentation of the selected groups, then the speaker's presentation, and an open forum, and lastly, an event summary to talk about what are our key takeaways for this event. So yeah, right now we are 21 in the meeting. So I also encourage everyone to use the Zoom background that we provided. Maybe you could change your background if you are able to. Yeah. And also for the information of everyone, we would also be recording this session. So we would also share it to our 3E learning as a material for others to also view and learn from. So it's nice to see everyone. I see Samuel. Hello, welcome. And I see Wenning. Hello. Hello, nice to see you guys. And Aman, that's so early to come in this workshop today. Yeah, it's nice to see you. We have Alex, Jasmine. Yeah, let's wait for a few more people. So as we wait, I would encourage everyone to prepare your curriculum vitae and the assignment that we prepared. We would be discussing that at the end, during the discussion as a group. Yeah. All right. So while we're waiting for a few more people to come in, maybe I could interview some of the people that are already here. I see Juliet doing this. So maybe I could start with Juliet. Juliet, how are you doing today? And what are your expectations for our session? Go ahead.
Thank you, Paula, for giving me this opportunity that I was not expecting. So I'm really doing great and I'm very excited. I am looking forward to learning actually how to write a proper CV and a cover letter, and also to be able to hear about the do's and don'ts when doing the same. So I'm really hoping that by the end of the session, and I'm sure actually that by the end of the session, I will be able to learn these things, and I will be able to put up a very good CV and a cover letter in the future.
Wow. Thank you very much, Juliet, for sharing. I also see Wenning here. Hi, Wenning. Where are you joining us from? Maybe you could say hi and set our expectations for the day. Go ahead.
So, hello Paula, I am from Indonesia, from local community Hasanuddin University. It's located in Makassar. It's really great to be being in here with all of you, and I hope I can make an effective curriculum vitae because I have an experience my you know when my lectures in language tell me that my curriculum vitae is not really good. So I hope it really helps me. That's all from me.
Yeah, thank you very much, Wenning, for sharing your experience. I have the same experience as well. Creating a curriculum vitae is quite seems like a simple job, but actually it isn't, and we need to take note of the different aspects which we are going to discuss later on during our session. So maybe I could hear one more from the crowd. I hope that you guys would also open your video so we could have a very interactive session. So maybe I could hear from Agustin. Where are you joining us from and what are your expectations?
Hello, Paula. Thanks. It's difficult to compete against these two great interviewers you had, but I'm joining from Chile. It's like 9 a.m. here. My expectations for the workshop are also the same than the girls. I would really love to actually be able to get these opportunities that we've been offered through IFSA. I think that lots of us have the knowledge and the motivation and the skills needed, but maybe we are not able to show it through the CV or through motivation letters. So this barrier, I hope that after the workshop is kind of down, so we have the opportunities to actually participate in this kind of events and opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you for sharing, Agustin. So by my time, we have already waited for 5 minutes. And if you guys would let me, I would now um, open the program. So, good day, everyone. I am Paula May Dagsi. I am from the Philippines, and I welcome you all to the first capacity building workshop on applying for opportunities. So, to give you a brief background, the Capacity Development Commission, or CDC, is working on strengthening the members' skills and motivation to work through a soft skills based webinar series. So, our commission has identified three topics that may be useful to IPSA officials and members. And one of these topics is applying for opportunities. So, today's objective is to make IPSA members improve and develop their skills by giving them the work tools to encourage them to apply for open calls in IPSA and also in international forestry organizations. So today we would be focusing on how to write a curriculum vitae and motivation letter effectively and how to tailor the letter to the advertisement. But before we begin, I would like to give the floor to our very hardworking IFSA Vice President, Simon Masaro, for a word of welcome. The floor is yours, Simone.
Hi everyone, and thanks for the introduction. So I was saying, as Paula was saying, I'm the current IFSA Vice President, and now I the super hard task to welcome you. So I have to say welcome. And yeah, I think that's just a really nice opportunity to, I'm really happy to see that we are managing to organize this stuff. There's been a lot of background work to get this done, and I think it's going to be really valuable to try to improve a bit the skills of members and also take advantage that now everything needs to be aligned so we can be more inclusive. And I think that's something nice. So I can only wish you that it was going to be an interesting workshop and have fun.
So thank you very much, Simone, for those short but very heartwarming welcome. Indeed, it's a great opportunity to become more inclusive with everyone, and I hope that we interact as much as possible and share our smiles for today. So next up, we have our short speaker introduction. So I am honored to present to you our speaker for today. So our distinguished speaker today is from Germany, and she has a master's in science in forest science and forest ecology from the University of Göttingen. Please correct me if I'm wrong. She is a former vice president of IFSA and has experience in global student networking, project management, and has a strong passion in helping forestry students reach their full potential. So currently, she is working at EFI in the joint EFI IFSA IUFRO project on global students networking and green jobs in the forest sector. So in both IFSA and her current job, she had the opportunity to review many diverse applications. So let's give a virtual round of applause to Lisa C. Pryor, our speaker for today. So Lisa, you may say a few words before we have the hands-on activity. The floor is yours.
Hi, thank you, Paula, for the very kind introduction. I was actually very honored to be invited to be the first speaker of this wonderful new capacity building workshop series. I think it's great this finally comes into life in IFSA, and I'm looking forward to the workshop and trying my best to share what I have learned over the last couple of years, writing applications, but also reviewing quite a few. So I hope we have fun today.
Definitely. So thank you very much. So for the fun part of our workshop today, we would be having our hands-on activity. So just before Lisa discusses, we would have this goal to have an interactive and dynamic activity. So first of all participants will be put out in different breakout rooms, and we would have a Jamboard activity wherein we would you could see the Jamboard activity on the link provided in the chat box. So we would use the Jamboard for the session. We expect that the participants would do a short introduction and discuss the key questions that we created. So as you all know, we assigned you that a curriculum vitae that you have prepared for this session. So in your small groups, we are hoping that you determine as a group which are the most important parts of a curriculum vitae. Then afterwards, after determining which are the important parts, you would determine as a group the best way to arrange those important parts that you identified. And lastly, you would ask yourselves and discuss what would be the things to avoid in creating a curriculum vitae. Then afterwards, we would be randomly selecting some groups to present their outcomes. So right now, I will send you to your breakout rooms. If you have any questions, please let us know. So, yeah. Please accept the breakout room invitation. So, There you go. Good luck, everyone. Good luck. I hope you join the breakout rooms.
There's a few very small ones now, Paula, with only 2 people.
Yeah, I'm also looking at them. So maybe I could move them to another group.
Yeah, and there's one
To-
person unassigned.
Yeah. Assigned to group number 10. Then checking. Hi, Dina, Ali, Mariella, please join the groups.
Maybe move the person from room 8 to 7?
8.
Because there's only one
7.
person there.
Yeah. Then room 8, he's okay. There
And
are
then maybe
few...
Ali can join room 7 as
Room 7? Or
I don't know, it shows me room 7 is only 2 people, but there's 3, so I think it's fine.
maybe room 5.
Yes.
Yeah, I got that. I think they're also having like issues with connection. That's why. Then I'll move room 3. Yes. Then Ali, are you okay? Or are you not joining the group?
I think he wrote he had troubles connecting and turning on his mic, so maybe.
Yeah, I moved the other one to another group.
Yeah.
Wow, this is harder than expected. This is harder than I expected. Oh, I forgot to do the timer. Gosh.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you
now
for
it
your...
looks good. It seems to be 3 per room.
Mhm.
Apart from Monica not having joined her room.
Hi, Monica. Please join your room. Are you there, Monica? At least everyone is with their groups.
Do they have the link to the...
Yep.
Okay.
Why is Simone joining another? What's happening? Move to room. Oh,
I mean, it's fine, but where did he come from? Simona, which room? Ah, room 5, Ali. Okay, but that's fine. It looks okay.
Looks okay. Let's work from this. Hi, Mariella. Let's put you in a room. I'm looking for one. We could room 10. Please join. Please join the group, Mariella, if you could hear us. Maybe we could start checking, Lisa. Maybe you could start from room 1. Then let's go. I'll start from room 10. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead. Barbara is also here. Hi, Barbara. Hi, Shuan. We're actually having a group session, so I'll assign you to one room, room 8. Hi, Barbara. I'll send the broadcast message, the activity. Yeah.
I'm quite happy to take questions as I go along. And let's find out how I share my screen first. There we go. There we go. Right. So first to the basics, and then we come to the structure. I think Juliet already picked it up, but I also heard it a few times. keep it short. Thumb rule, if you don't have more than 5 years of work experience, your CV should never be longer than 2 pages. Later on, it might become relevant to have a bit more longer, elaborate CV, but you're not doing yourself a favor if you just start out to cram everything you've ever done in your life in there, because people also basically take a very short look at your CV in the beginning, and sometimes that can even be the sorting point. And if it takes them 10 minutes to read it, you might just be discarded because of this. So keep it short and keep it to the point. Also, everyone mentioned contact details. Yes, please make them clear and easy to find. It's the most frustrating thing when you selected someone and you want to contact them, and then you're like, phew, wow, there's a lot going on this page. Where is this email address I'm looking for? So make sure this is very much easy to find and somewhere at the top. Always have the most up-to-date information first, and then so basically counter chronological. You start with what you're currently doing, and then you work your way down. Same, most important information first, and then the rest follows. Also, if it's not relevant to the position, most likely you want to delete it. If it's been more than 5 or 10 years ago, probably not that relevant, delete it. And if you just passively attended something, also probably not that relevant to mention, so it can be deleted. And don't worry, there will still be enough left of your CV. Right, now a bit to the structure. I think you all pointed that one out. You will have the personal information first. Important to have your full name, and then the contact details. As a minimum, this should include an email and probably a phone number. With the address, I agree, on LinkedIn, you shouldn't put your address. If you put it in a CV you send, it's a bit up on the context. If it's internationally, it doesn't matter so much. If you do it locally, I would always include it because it can just help understand how long your commute will be. I kind of like if I can at least tell in what country the person is living at the moment, but addresses in general not so relevant to have in there. Everything else on personal information is a bit more difficult or depending on the situation. I asked a couple of colleagues for their advice, and one of them I picked up that I thought was quite useful is if you have a LinkedIn profile, maybe put the link in your personal information in the CV, because this gives you also the opportunity, if you really think all those great things you've been doing that I just told you to delete, you can keep them in your LinkedIn profile. And if once people become curious, they will go and check it out, and then they can see all the additional things you've done. But it avoids having 2 pages completely full with text. Also in one of the groups we discussed already a bit, the picture. This also depends a bit on context. So I come from Germany, and in Germany, you always put a picture in your CV. In the US, completely uncommon. In international, from what I observed, it's becoming more popular, but it's fine either way. And but this is me being from Germany, would personally recommend to include one, because if I do the interview with you, I will see you anyways. And it just gives a nice impression, and it also helps to structure the CV layout a little bit. So don't be afraid to put a picture in. It's not something to exclude anymore, and I think it's becoming more common. Also, if I go to your LinkedIn profile, I will see your picture anyway. So might as well have it right there. Some people like to do a little sentence personal statement. Not an absolute must, but I actually started to really appreciate it when I review CVs now, but it should really just be a 1 sentence or like 3 words to describe yourself type thing. Don't write half an essay about yourself in the CV. That's not the purpose of it. You could also, instead of this sentence, capture this key achievements. I've seen that done smartly a couple of times. So you really just have your key qualifications. So basically, master students in forest science, experienced researcher, and the main topic or something. But really just as a key highlight, so you have in one glimpse already the key statements. Can do, doesn't have to be. Date of birth, debatable. If you feel fine with it, include it. It's not a must, and it can be discriminatory. But I also think it very much depends. If you apply for a junior position, no one will expect you to be 40 years old, so it's fine. But also it doesn't really need to be there. And the same is true for a lot of things. I'm sometimes amazed what people put in their CV. I don't really need to know if you're married. I don't need to know your parents' name or what their occupation is. All this, at least in an international context, is rather uncommon. It can be very common maybe in your country. I have the feeling that in some regions or some cultures, it's super important. Internationally, what your parents do is your private thing. Doesn't matter for me to get an impression of your abilities. Right. So basically personal information can be as short as a name and an email address, but you can also spice it up a little bit. Then I start here now with work experience, but I get to this in a moment. If you're still studying or you just graduated, the first thing for you to come would probably be your education. But if you already had a job, the work experience should come first. So this is what I did in the structure now, but it depends a bit on your personal thing. For the work experience, always put the current occupation on top. So you, as I mentioned before, you go counter chronological. Very briefly describe the position, the organization it was with, the duration. So when did you start? When did you finish? And then give like 1 or 2 bullet points of the key tasks or the key achievements you had in this position. And basically you go down with every job you had. Only put in relevant work experience, meaning if you had a part-time babysitting job while you were in high school, not so relevant unless you apply to work with kids at this moment. So really just work experience that has something to do with it, or at least was full-time. Yeah. But most likely for a lot of you, it will be true that you are still in education or you recently graduated. So for you, the first part in your CV after your personal info would be education and training. And there it's basically the same type of thing. You work counter chronological, so you start with the latest at the top. Most likely your current enrollment. That should include the university it's at, the name of the course or the focus you're studying in, and the approximate finish date, when will you graduate. And then what I quite like to see is if you're doing a bachelor's or a master's, your focus for sure. If you finished it, write the title of your thesis in there, because that also shows what your focus area or your expertise in research has been. And then you work your way back. Again, only use the relevant education. So if you're doing your bachelor's now, maybe you include your current studies and then the last school after that, and everything before doesn't need to be included. If you're doing your master's, probably just include the master's you're doing now, and the bachelor's, everything that came before there, unless it's super, super special because maybe you did a year abroad or something, not so relevant. No one needs to know the name of the kindergarten you attended or the primary school. Yeah. And then after this, so if you had no work experience, this would be the spot for other experiences. Or if you have like a little bit of a mix of volunteering and you had some part-time jobs in forestry, I would title it practical experience and put it into one, because otherwise it also gets a bit iffy if you have too many headlines in there. Again, the keyword is everything that's relevant. And you could also include here some honors and awards and grants. But again, it should be somehow relevant and highlighting that it makes you stand out. There's no point in listing half a page of every honor you ever received, because most likely it will just come across as being a bit boastful and okay, that person has nothing else to tell maybe. So include a few very highlights that you're proud of, but don't list every single one. And yeah. And this is very personal, up to you. If you have some relevant work experience or part-time work, put it in. If you don't, think about what have you done volunteering-wise, what else have you done that could work out to show that you have some sort of experience here. Lastly, it's skills, and there it's very much up, and I think one of the groups mentioned this, it's very much up to what the job advertisement actually asks for. If they ask for special IT skills, you should of course include the programs you are able to work with. If it asks for languages, you should include it. Languages in general, I think it's fine to always include, but it's maybe not so relevant if you work at home and you're applying for a job where you're very sure no one will ever ask you to speak a word of English. Is it valuable information? Maybe not so much, but in general, languages don't hurt. About interests and hobbies, it's not so much needed. And I was discussing this with Juliet's group a little bit. I would go a little bit by this rule. If it makes you stand out or you're super proud of it, keep it in. Or if it's very unique, if you have to think really hard to come up with 3 hobbies to put in there, just leave it out, because everyone likes to read or watch TV series. It's probably not something that's going to make you stand out. But if it's a unique, a cool hobby or something that is very, very important to your personality, keep it in, because it might be something that you get asked again in the interview, and it could give you a little bit of a unique touch. And this key achievements, this is a bit of a repetition. I put it up at the first part of personal information, but you could also do this at the bottom, kind of summing up. So what really defines me is this qualification, this experience, and my research focus in XYZ. So that's up a bit to the layout you choose. And that's pretty much already it. A little bit special, if you are applying in research, you probably need to include your list of publications. Also, if you're applying in research, this conference attendance things become a bit more important. But then if you've been a speaker, include it for sure. If you really just went to the conference, unless it's super relevant to this area you're applying to, it might not be as interesting, because everyone can go and passively just consume people talking. Also, as I mentioned before, the LinkedIn link, if you're applying in research, it might be relevant to put your ResearchGate profile as well as a link here. Yeah. And then for personal touches in general, like I said, less is more. No one needs a 10-page CV. But if there's anything that wasn't in the list I gave that you think is super unique or particularly important or something you're proud of, please put it in, because this gives you a little bit of a personal touch, but don't overload the whole CV. Not everything is important. And also, if you have a gap in your CV, you might want to mention shortly why that is. So if you've traveled for a year, of course, put it in somewhere, but better to address it than just to try and sneak 5 years of nothingness in there. Yeah. And this also gives you a bit of an edge as well, because recruiters will bring up the things that are a bit unique, because they look at a lot of CVs and in general, they're all a bit similar. But if someone has something really interesting standing there, they probably want to learn a bit more. So it will give you something comfortable to talk about. All right, not sure if there was any questions so far, because I don't see all the windows anymore. No? Then
Idia raised her hand.
Okay. Idia, let's hear.
Okay, thank you. I want to ask about the personal information. We can put one's personal statement. For fresh graduate, I think it's hard to make one personal statement. Can we write just like this? It is important for us to grow and learn, so I like to join volunteering seminars or webinars. Can we put in our CV like that? Or maybe you can give us some example for fresh graduate. Thank you.
Actually, I like the idea. I'm not sure if I would point out that I like to attend specific seminars, but mentioning that you're excited to learn more and that that one of your key qualities is curiosity, something like this. Just a little statement in one sentence that sums you or your personality up. It doesn't have to be about any research or experience part, but can be just like, I'm curious by nature and always seeking new experiences, easygoing, something like this. One of those describing some of the soft skills you bring that aren't usually listed in a CV.
Okay, so Ali has a question. Go, Ali.
Hello, Lisa. Thank you for your amazing presentation. I have a question, which is, for example, in the DTE program, DTE02 asks for someone to help with the organizing international meeting. So if you want to write a CV for that, you should only put the experiences you have about organizing different events. And you don't have to put your other works and other experiences. Is that right?
Well, I don't know what experience you have. If you had a proper job, of course, put this as well. But I would then include things that show that you have experience with organization skills. And for organizing a conference, it's not that relevant that you're a super good lab worker, for example.
Mm-hmm. So is it also good to add the examples of your teamwork ability, how you can adapt in a team?
Yes,
is that
for
also
example, yeah, for sure. This DTE, for
Okay,
example, really tells you that you will be working in an international team. So anything that highlights that you're capable of this will be good. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so we see a lot of hands already like going up, but this isn't actually the open forum part. So Ali, Fahana, Dr. Fola, Professor Fola, maybe we could answer those questions or inquiries later on. So Lisa can proceed.
All right, as you wish. Just, and that's, I think, the last slide I have about CVs. There is, I actually came across this because applicants send it quite a lot and I didn't know about it, but there is this Europass CV, and I put the link here and I think you will have the presentation. I don't think it's absolute perfect, but I think it's a very good starting point if you make your first CV, because it helps you to structure it in a very formalized way, and then you can decide which parts you like and which you don't, and you can give it your own design, but it helps you to get the structure right in the first place. So I think that's a very good starting point. And I've seen this quite a few times now coming in with applications. Right. Before we move on to the motivation letter, I actually did a little survey with my colleagues because I also felt I'm not necessarily the most experienced HR person. I so far usually reviewed traineeship applications. So I asked them a few questions and I wanted to share what the general feedback was. So the first thing was, what is the first thing you look at? Because I noticed when I was sharing with colleagues, we'd had very different approaches to how we sort CVs. And there's not an absolute rule of thumb, but if we receive a lot of applications, we usually look at the CVs first, look at the qualifications and do a little bit pre-sorting this way. If there's a few less, we look at the letter first and then usually read, most of my colleagues said they read the first paragraph or so and go by this, because it gives you a first impression of the person and the motivation they bring. So both is important. Then I asked them what weighs more, and there also it was a bit undecided. But what was clear is if you have a slightly weaker CV, your motivation letter can absolutely balance this off. So if you can show why you would be a good person and maybe even admit to some of the experience you're lacking, but why you're confident that you can overcome this, a motivation letter can really help you to balance that there's not so much experience in your CV. But if there's a lot of applications, it can happen that the CV becomes the first sorting criteria. So both should look good, but one can balance the other out. And then I asked them a little bit on things that really bug them when they read applications. And what was mentioned most often is poor grammar and spelling. So please, once you've written it, check it or give it to one of your friends to proofread it, because it just shows that maybe you're not that dedicated, and that's sad if you get discarded just because you did a couple stupid little typing errors. So check it. It's no harm if you have 1 or 2 mistakes, but if you can see clearly this person did not pay attention to detail, it will put you off a bit. Repetitiveness, yes, you're supposed to argue why you're the good candidate, but you don't need to repeat 15 times that you're great because you're so enthusiastic about everything. Put it to the point once, but don't repeat it too often. Like I mentioned before, leave irrelevant information out. One of my colleagues was particularly adamant at have a letter. So apparently she gets a lot of applications where people just send a CV and don't send a letter. So don't do that mistake. You want both. As I said, that can also help you balance it out. If you can't find the contact details, it drives people mad. Almost everyone replied this. And then for the letter, they were all a bit bugged if you're not addressing the requirements of the position. So the letter is also really where you want to say, okay, this was the things that they look for. So now I'm presenting why I'm a good candidate for this. If it's too long and uninspired, so you don't want to read a 2-page essay again, too much copy and paste. I know it's super easy to just Google motivation letter and then take the paragraphs and change a few words, but try to be a bit more personal and not just copy paste it completely. And then, yes, be motivated, but don't overdo it. So if it reads like you're an angel fallen from the star that we've just been waiting for and it's gonna save everything, it's not gonna sound realistic, and it might also be a bit of a red flag. So be realistic and motivated, but not overly over the top. And then the CV, like I said before, don't have it too long. On the other hand, what positively surprised people is a bit of an innovative design to the CV, because you see lots and lots of them. So if one stands out a bit, it's nice. Making use of links, that's what I mentioned before. So having this link to ResearchGate, and once people are curious, they might want to learn a bit more. And if you're being honest, so this also includes if you're not 100% there with what is asked for the job, be honest about it, and then given a good argument why you think you can grow in this and why you still think you're capable of achieving it. That's much better than trying to oversell yourself. And lastly, I asked them for anything they wish that applicants would know and consider. And I'm not going to go through this, but I know you can see the slides later. So maybe there's a couple of takeaway messages. All right. Now, I was asked before to please address the question, what is a cover letter? What is a motivation letter? And then while I was doing my little research, I also found the letter of interest. And basically what Google tells us is that a cover letter is written in response to a position, while a motivation letter is more sort of a free inquiry, and then some other pages tell you differently. So what I summed up was the cover letter is when you're responding to an advertisement, and basically you wanna write, why are you the perfect candidate? The motivation letter apparently seems to be this name when you're applying for university or volunteering with an NGO. And again, it asks you, why are you the perfect candidate? So basically it's the same thing, and it is used synonymous sometimes. And since you're not writing on the top motivation letter, I think it doesn't matter which exact wording is meant. And the last one, the letter of interest, is basically when you're applying without a job advertisement. So again, you actually want to show why you're good for the company, but here you don't argue for a specific position. You need to be a bit more creative and also tell what you actually want from it. But overall, what I'm going to now, I think I called it motivation letter from here on, is always a little bit similar, just phrased slightly differently. Right, motivation letters, the hard ones. Basic, again, make sure your name and contact detail is also clear on the motivation letter, because we want to be able to contact you. If you're applying directly to a position, name this position somewhere in the beginning of it. If there was a code, include this code. Then I left a couple of things out apparently. Highlight in the end, highlight your availability, and always be very polite. So thank you for your time and looking forward to hearing from you, all those things. It just leaves a very neat impression if you're phrasing it in a polite way. For the formalities, I like it when it's neat, which also means use it a little bit like a normal letterhead. Have a date and a place there somewhere, because this would then help me, for example, to figure out where you actually are. Make sure the formatting is smooth. As Juliet said, use one font. You can be, I use this picture here, you can be a bit creative. You can use some colors. You could include your picture, it's absolutely not needed. It's nice when it actually matches the CV, because it makes it easier for me to then find it again later. Because sometimes you print everything and then you have this big pile of paper on your desk. So if it has the same design, it's easier to match them back together. It's always nice to actually have a signature, whether you drew it on Paint or whether you actually really signed it, doesn't matter, but it looks more personal than just typed. And if you actually do it in a letter format and it's very formal, also include the address and all this stuff of the company you're applying for. I think it's not as relevant today anymore, because usually you send an email, but sometimes it's still needed to have this very formal setup, and it basically looks like a letter, but you never put it in an envelope and send it. And then if they ask you for a lot of attachments, I would recommend to please make a little list of the attachments. It helps me to figure out what has been sent, but it also helps you to keep track that you don't forget to send something that was required in the end. Right. So now going through this a little bit. The gist of the motivation letter is, why are you the perfect candidate? So you start out potentially stating where you found the vacancy. I think it's not that relevant, but it can help you to just open the sentence. So it's fine to say, I saw your advertisement on LinkedIn and I got really excited because I always dreamed about working in this field, or I always dreamed about working with your company, whatever it is, why this advertisement caught your interest. And then you have 1 or 2 paragraphs to highlight your previous experience and the value you bring to the company. And this can be a bit of a mix. So it can be your working experience, it can be any professional skills you have, but it can also be personal features. Just really look at the job advertisement, what is required, and reflect on, why would I meet this criteria? Have I done anything that uses those skills before? Have I had experiences that are relevant? Or is this really just my burning passion? Find the things that you have and then argue why this makes you really good and fitting. Ideally, you highlight things that aren't in your CV already, or a couple of additional things that aren't in your CV, so it's not too repetitive. But you can also pick out some singular ones, the ones that are particularly important. It's not needed in the cover letter to again mention everything that's also in your CV, because I will read your CV, so I will know about it. And most importantly, be honest. So if there's something where you're not completely fitting it, maybe address it, but be honest about it. Don't try to come up with things that aren't true. And also, if you already have doubts if it's fitting, then maybe reflect again if this is really something you want to do, or if you just want to apply because you're desperate to get anything. Because ultimately, most likely this will come out. You can, even if you manage to fake it through an interview, once you start in the company and you already had a feeling that the position isn't really what you want to do, you will not become happy with it. So be also honest to yourself and don't just apply for the sake of getting anything. Right, to sum it up, keep it short. Usually a motivation letter is 1 page. It's rather 3 than 5 paragraphs, but I know that can be super difficult. It can be 2 pages, but then you should really find an ending. If you can, it's always nice to find out who the person is that you're applying to and directly address them with name. If you cannot find out because it's not mentioned anywhere, maybe you can find the right position title. So maybe you address it to the head of HR, but at least write "Dear Madam or Sir." Try to avoid saying "to whom it may concerns" because it makes it sound super vague and yeah. Then ideally use shorter sentences because it's easier to read, and just be mindful that this whole letter will also be a bit of a writing sample. So be sure you use good phrasing. And then as a cherry on top, maybe you can use a light and recognizable design that matches the CV. And I think that's pretty much it for the motivation letter. I don't know, Paula, if you want to stop for questions. Otherwise, I have a few more slides on other items and then specifically on IFSA applications.
Maybe we could just have it all bulked in one open forum.
Cool. Then on other application items, make sure you read it properly and you include everything that was required. So if they asked you for your transcript of records, please include it. If they ask for recommendation letters, find a good professor or someone that you trust has a good ability to write this for you and to judge you properly. Include the recommendation letters. If there's other proof of qualification needed, include it. And in general, if you need to scan or copy anything, please make sure it's readable, it has an appropriate image quality, it's not upside down or left way over, and it's not this format, but somehow it actually is readable. And then unless it's asked differently, and specifically if it's asked this way, please put it in one PDF, because you might end up on the other end with 50 applications. And if every of those 50 applications sends you 5 documents, you end up with a whole mess of documents and you're just frustrated. So if they ask for it, or if they don't ask for a specific format, put them all in one PDF. It makes it look a bit neater and it flows a bit easier to read and review. Right. About adding more than what is asked. If you have a great recommendation letter from your supervisor, of course, include it. It's fine. Worst that can happen is that people don't look at it because they say it would be an unfair advantage, but no one will exclude you because you send it. But don't send 50,000 pages of every participation certificate you have since 5th grade, because that will make you look a bit desperate. So if it's relevant and it's nice, include it, but no need to include anything you ever received in the world. Right. And then we get to the last part and what I was actually invited for, which is applying within IFSA. And I think the most common opportunities that come up in IFSA is delegations. And that one I cannot really talk much about because usually this is done in a Google form. And I think all of you have done it for this workshop. So you just follow the instructions there and that's fine. The other big thing in IFSA is official positions, and there's a lot of them coming up soon since there will be the GA and all the officials will be newly elected. So you might be looking for an application soon. And what is usually required within IFSA is a motivation letter and a motivation video, and then a verification letter, which I'm sure you're all familiar with as IFSA members. So what do you do when you want to apply for an official position? Well, you go and you read the call carefully, same as for any job application. You read what the position is about, you reflect on it. Is it something I'm interested in? Is it something I'm fit to do? With IFSA, it's important to know you will have to bring a lot of intrinsic motivation. There will usually not be someone to drive you. So you should really think, do I want this and am I interested enough in it? If you only apply because you think it's easy or no one else will apply for this one, so this is the one where I have the best chances, same as I said before, most likely you're not going to end up very happy with it. So really think if it's something you want to do. Then look at the job description. That's a document IFSA has for almost all the positions, and it's usually part of the call and gives you a bit more detail on what the job is about. And if you're still convinced you want to do it, you can look up the current holder of the position. And I'm sure a few people want to kill me now, but it's actually the best way to learn. And just throw them an email or write them in the chat and ask them a bit about what they're actually doing day to day. And maybe they can even have a call. I mean, we all love to connect in IFSA, so it's fine. And that will help you really know what you're getting yourself into. So now it's about preparing your documents. Be sure you keep the required format and you send it to the right address, because sometimes stuff gets sent to everyone. So usually it says, send it to, I assume it's Simone. So then please send it there. Or maybe it's the council, but really just send it to whoever is mentioned in the call. And keep to the deadline, because it just helps everyone involved with the preparations. Now for the required documents, the motivation letter. The calls often outline specific questions or structures, and if that's the case, please stick to it. Otherwise, everything I said about general motivation letters also applies here. So unless you're asked differently, just go with the regular motivation highlighting why you're the perfect person for this job. For the motivation video, this is a bit special to IFSA, and it's actually becoming slightly more common, and I took it with me to our traineeship program because I really liked how the videos work. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with it, but this came to be because in IFSA, usually you're selected through a live event, so through the General Assembly, and then everyone that's present, they can stand up and they can give a speech, and the videos were meant to give people that aren't in the room the advantage to also be seen and also speak freely and not just have someone random read their letter to the audience. So this is how this started, and we actually started really liking the videos because it helps you just get a better picture of the applicant. Again, as always, keep to the instructions. You'd be amazed how often people really can't read instructions. So be sure you do it. If there's a time limit, stick to the time limit and make sure whatever is asked to be covered should be covered. And then, and I'm sure Simone will agree with this a lot, make sure it's a neat video. It doesn't need to be fancy, but if you can find a friend to hold a camera for 10 minutes, please, I'm sure you have someone that can do this for you. If you really can't, use your computer to self-record, because at least then it's a stable picture. Make sure you're in a quiet surrounding. Ideally, you even have a nice backdrop, but if not, that's fine. But maybe you can find something a little bit nicer than your messy old clothes on your bed or something like this. And then once you recorded it, watch it. Because maybe the sound didn't work quite well and no one can hear you speaking. Or maybe there's a radio in the background blaring louder than you are. Or maybe there's a chicken in the background that's screaming so loud that no one can hear and gets completely distracted. And all this will not help you actually be heard and your message to be heard. And also make sure that you can actually see your face. So really check your video before you send them. We received a few where we were just like, did they even see themselves? So this is your chance to leave a first impression. So really make sure you do it right. And if it didn't go right the first time, re-record it, it's fine. If you have great skills in editing, of course, throw them in there, but it's not needed. Usually, I've seen a lot of videos that were very simple, people just talking, but if it brings across your motivation and your personality, that's all you want. And I think that was it. That was a lot of talking. So thank you very much for bearing with me, and I hope you have a lot of questions.
All right, so thank you, Lisa, for your very nice presentation. And now I open the floor for any questions that the participants may have. So you can raise your hand, unmute yourself, or you could also use the chat. So go ahead, everyone. I know you have many questions to ask Lisa.
Can I add a couple of addition to the IFSA side of stuff?
Sure, go ahead, Simone.
So the first thing I want to say that this I forgot, don't put background music in videos because it's not nice if there is background music and no one is going to see that you made this extra effort of putting music. And the second thing that I want to share with you is that that's the internal document that we're using since last year to do the evaluation of the open call. So basically, for every item that is in the open call, we put a comment, and just to let you know, to share with you how it works. It's on the other side because that's even if it's easy, you can know what happens.
All right. So thank you very much for sharing, Simone. And now, if anyone has any questions, please, please raise your hand and use the chat box. Go, guys. I know you're excited.
Well, while you're all trying to find your courage, I read a comment from Professor Fola, and he's actually really right. It might help to have a general CV with just everything listed, and then whenever you apply for a job, you make a catered CV specifically to this one, where you take some of the ones out, and you might highlight something that's specifically important for this position you're applying for. I think that's a very good idea.
Yes. So thank you
come
for
on.
that one. Come on, guys. Ask questions. There, Idia and Barbara. Go ahead, Idia.
Okay. So I want to ask about the motivational video. The content is should we make it like saying what in the motivation letter, like it's scripted. I mean, the video is scripted, like so formal, like in the motivation letter. Can we make it like that, or we can make it more creative, like, hello, my name is Ilya, and put some edits like that.
I think for sure it can be more creative, and you're speaking to me, so it's always nice to say, hi, I'm Ilya, and so on. So it shouldn't be just reading the motivation letter. It's also fine if you're really nervous to make yourself a script, but generally creative, but still getting across the most relevant information is good. And if you have skills to edit it a bit, or if you want to at least cut your outtakes out, that's absolutely fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Idia, for asking. Next, we have Barbara.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lisa, for this presentation. It was really interesting. I have one question connected to education, because there's always this example of don't put your kindergarten or elementary school in there, which I wouldn't do. But what is your opinion about secondary school? Is that already too far back, or yeah, I wanted to hear your opinion there.
I think it depends a bit. If I would apply now within Germany and I wouldn't work, I would have just finished school, I might have included my grade, because we have Abitur and there it indicates a little bit about you. But if I would apply now internationally, I probably leave it out. The one I tend to leave in is I did a high school year for 1 year in the US. So that one I would probably keep in, because it already shows that I have this drive for internationalization and my English is quite well. Things like this, yes. Otherwise, I don't think the secondary school is that important once you actually have a degree anymore.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Next, we have Alex for his question. Go ahead, Alex.
Okay, thank you very much. Lisa, for the video, the last time I applied for DT, I used a PowerPoint and Zoom to record the video. Do you think for the motivational video, would you like something like this or something without any software? I mean.
I've seen different ones, and I think ultimately for me, they're all good as long as you come across confident. So I've seen similar ones to yours where people use a presentation, and that can be a very neat way when you struggle a bit with being to the point and you need like little things to keep a structure. And I think that's very well because it shows you prepared, it shows you reflected upon it. So I think it's super. I had people that did crazy video editing, and that can also be nice. But I also had people that just like this recorded themselves talking on the laptop, and it's fine. As long as you come across with the points you want to make, all of this is good. Of course, it is a little bonus. If you actually made a presentation and you sat down and thought about it, it might come as a bit more prepared and a bit more engaged than someone just doing a brief recording.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we good, Alex? All right, thank you for asking. So we have next Fahana Samuel. Go ahead.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Sam from Nigeria. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My question is, do I have to always edit my CV for every position I'm applying for? Then secondly, why checking the requirement for Dare to Explore, one of the opportunities that I was hoping to apply for? I was seeing motivation video, and it's my first time of coming across such. So I really don't know how to go about it, and the deadline is very short. Tomorrow is the deadline, and it's my first time of applying for such opportunity. How do I go about it? Thank you very much.
All right, so I think the first one was whether you need a new CV for every application. It depends a bit. I would at least look at it before and then check if there's anything I want to take out or I want to highlight, because it helps if your CV is catered to what you're applying for. But if you just graduated and there's not much in the CV in the first place, it's also fine to use the same one as long as it's nice and well structured. For the video, honestly, just take the courage and do it. And maybe really find a friend to do it with that can give you a bit of feedback and tell you, oh, actually you look super nervous because you're currently moving and twisting, or can say, okay, this was a bit too long. Just someone you trust to reflect a bit. Otherwise, really just have the courage to take the video, say who you are, say why you wanted to apply for particularly this position, and why you think you would be a very good fit for it. That's it. It's not that difficult, and it just helps to see a face rather than just reading a letter. That's why we do this.
All right. I think, are you satisfied, Sam? We good?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. So we have next Juliet. Go ahead. Ask your question.
Thank you, Paula. I will give this chance to Simona first because he can't raise his hand, and then I will be next.
Go ahead, Simona.
Okay, so I have a question for a little bit general. Is it like, do you think that IFSA can be considered as a work experience or a volunteering experience? Because I always have this kind of question, because IFSA is kind of between. It's not really a work, but you still do a lot of stuff. So I don't know. That was.
That's why I go the sneaky way of using it as practical experiences. But I think there's no harm to include it under work experience, but somehow highlight that it was volunteered. Because of course it's a bit different. Well, it can be a full-time job, but technically it isn't. So like I said before, the structure I used when I had no work experience yet was I would use the education, and then I would do practical experience. And there I would, for example, include my IFSA time, but maybe also include a part-time job I had at university if it was relevant. So there you can mix it a bit and be fluctuant. But what is clear for sure is that this voluntary work can be a super relevant experience, and it should definitely be in your CV, because it shows, first of all, that you're motivated because you're doing something out of your own will without getting paid for it. But it also, especially with IFSA, and if you're applying in this realm of adjacent organizations that are all very much aware of IFSA, we know that you learn teamwork and you learn a lot of things about organizations. So I would for sure keep it in there. If it's then mentioned as a work experience or practical experience, it doesn't matter so much.
Are you satisfied, Simone, or you have follow-up questions?
Thanks, Lisa.
Okay. We move back to Juliet. Go ahead, Juliet.
Okay, thank you, Lisa, for the great presentation, and thank you, Paula, for the great moderation. I have two questions. So the first one is, do you have a recommendation on the font size and the spacing that one should use in their CVs and cover letter? And secondly, do you usually check the email with which these application documents are sent? And what would your recommendation be on this?
Very good point. Well, about the font and the size, not so much. Don't use a font 10 and use the whole space and only have 0.5 centimeter of room everywhere. The point is not to cram as much information as possible in there, but to make it as structured and easy to read as possible. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. And maybe don't use Comic Sans because people just really don't like that font. But no, it's fine, whatever makes sense and whatever looks slightly clean and yet appealing. So no strong feelings. About the email, actually super good point. Someone reads that email. It might not always be the person that reads your application, but it might very well be. So it doesn't need to be a super long email, but it should be polite and just be 1 or 2 sentences of thank you for the opportunity. You find my application attached. If there's any more questions, feel free to contact me. Looking forward to hearing from you. So that one for sure. I find it frustrating. I've received a few where there was absolutely nothing, that's just the attachment. But I also received a few that used this as a second motivation letter. And honestly, if I receive so many emails, I don't want to read them. So yes, write something, but be neat, be friendly, very polite and to the point. It leaves a good first impression.
All right. So Juliet seems satisfied. I learned a lot from that question. So up next we have Professor Fola. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. I think most of what I want to ask have been answered, and I just want to make 1 or 2 comments with what Lisa have already done. Lisa have done excellent to the presentation. Thank you so much. What I just want to emphasize again is what I've already sent in the chat, and Lisa have already mentioned it, that most of us that if you want to have a CV, you should try and have 2 types of CV. Always have a general CV where you will have everything that have to do with you in that general CV. That general CV is not what you send out for your application or for any advert or placement or scholarship or something. You must always customize a CV from this general CV that you are sending out. So try and have a general CV where you have saved on your laptop, on your computer, and then you can save in one of these cloud, and you can access it anywhere you go to. It's not necessary on your laptop. Make sure it's in the cloud. And then it is from this general CV that you can always extract and customize the CV you are sending out. So I will not suggest that you just have a CV without customizing it to any call and you send it like that. So always customize your CV that you are sending out for any call. So each call should have a customized CV in order for you to be able to address the application properly, the advert properly. So that is one thing I want to quickly just add to what Lisa has already presented. But if I want to ask Lisa, do you think I can use email to write and send a motivation, or a motivation must be in PDF? Because you can see some guys may just type their maybe motivation in email and send without putting on maybe PDF or Microsoft Word or something. Do you think it's proper to use email in sending maybe your cover letter, motivation letter, or things like that? Oh, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Professor Fuller. Very, very true. And I think it's very helpful to have that full CV and just extract from it whenever you're preparing for an application. I think that's a very good hint. For your question, I would really, really recommend to have it as a PDF. If you can't have it as a PDF, fine, have it as a Word. PDF makes more sense because I don't want to rewrite your CV, your motivation letter. I would refrain from writing it in the email because you never know. Maybe the email the applications get sent to is just some secretary collecting them. And for them, it's a double step to then extract the email into a format that can be shared. It might get lost on the way. It causes some frustration. I would always recommend to have a document for your letter.
Okay. So do you have any follow-up questions, Professor Fola? Okay. Excellent response, as said by Professor Fola. So are there any other questions from the participants? Anything else you'd like to ask? Go, Juliet.
It's not a question, but rather a comment. So I would advise you that once you've applied for a position, always ensure that you are available and you're reachable. Because I once saw somebody who applied for an IFSA position and the person had not sent in their letter from the LC. So the team got back to him to send the letter because he was one of the successful applicants that had been selected, but the person was not reachable and it was such a short notice and short deadline. So this person missed the opportunity just like that. So once you send an application, always be ready and expect maybe you might be contacted. So be available. And once they ask for something that you did not submit, provide it as quickly as possible. Don't wait for another 2 weeks. Nobody will wait for you because there are other people who are qualified, you know? So it's just a word of advice.
Okay, thank you very much, Juliet, for that. Sam has another question. Go ahead, Sam.
All right, thank you, Paula. My question is, do I have to get membership verification letter each time I want to apply for a position? Because early this year, I applied for UFO opportunity, which unfortunately I didn't qualify. And I got a letter from my local committee president for membership verification. And currently, I'm not in school and I want to apply for Dare to Explore. Do I have to get a new letter or I could still use the former letter I got from my local president?
So for Dare to Explore, I can respond, and I think it's fine if you include the latest one you have. It doesn't need to be a new one. In general, I would say Simone might be better suited to respond here what the current practice in IFSA is. And I think there's some updates soon as well how this works.
Not yet. Soon. Get ready for some news for the GA. But so far, we still have the old application letter system.
So you need a new one every time?
The important thing that's recent enough. And like usually you apply, I don't think you apply for next opportunity every 2 months. So basically, yes, we need a new one for every time you apply, because I think it's like, it's important you remember now in the time you're applying, not 1 year ago. So 1 year is definitely old. And so I think practically this means we just make a new one.
Okay. Do you have follow-up questions from Sam? Or are we satisfied?
Concerning what Simeon said, currently I'm currently on industrial training and I'm currently not in school. And looking at the deadlines tomorrow, contacting new president of my local committee might be difficult, which will make me not meet up with the deadline. So what can I do?
Like I said, for the Dare to Explore, to me, it's fine. Include the last one you have, because for Dare to Explore, you also don't need to be an IFSA member. You just need to be studying at a university that has an IFSA LC. So if it's relatively new, just include it and it's fine.
All right, thank you very much, Lisa.
No problem.
Okay, so thank you, Sam. We have a question from um, someone from the chat, and she really wants to ask Lisa that she doesn't really understand about the social media thread that you're talking about. So if you could give us an example for like it's some of the requirements for the open call. Probably Idia is talking about the links. Maybe you could expound on that, Lisa.
All right. So the links I mentioned was mostly the LinkedIn. And if you're not familiar with LinkedIn in general, it's a platform where similar to Facebook, but professional. And there you put all your, where you currently worked, where you last worked, basically everything that's in a CV. And you can also have people approve that you have certain skills. So they can say, yes, I worked with this person. So it's sort of a network that helps you build your professional profile. And if you have such a profile, it can help to have your CV include a little link to your LinkedIn profile, or it can just include your name, how you can be found there. Because I actually do that quite a lot as well. Once I have some applicants selected, I sometimes look at their LinkedIn profile just to get a bit of a deeper picture and see what else they may have done. So this is a nice way to still include the informations that aren't as relevant for this specific CV and application, while not clustering this 2 pages full of stuff. So once you have my attention, I might choose to go on this link, and it will just allow you to present a bit more of yourself. And the same with ResearchGate. I think I don't have one because I don't publish, but if you're a researcher and you publish, you most likely have a ResearchGate profile, and you will know what to do with this. And I would include it there because it's very common practice.
All right. So she is satisfied. So next we have Alex. Go ahead, Alex.
Thank you, Lisa. And my question is, what is your perception on adding date of birth and gender on CVs? And because generally, I personally add it that I don't have to give the recruiter some worry or headache to know what age am I or what gender am I. So what is your view?
I would probably be with you. I'm a curious person, so I like to have it there, and then at least I know, okay, he's about this age and fine. And with the gender, I think it's helpful because sometimes, especially when it's names that I'm not familiar with, I might actually struggle to figure out when I send an email if I should address this person as sir or madam, or sometimes even what is the first name and not. So you can just there actually be a little bit helpful to the person reading the application, to just give them this little hint, because sometimes it's not as obvious. But I also think it's fine not to include it. Like, I see no harm in doing it, but I understand that in some regions this can be very uncommon, because especially this US type of things, you want to avoid having any discrimination, and then you leave your age and your picture and your gender out. And if that's the way you choose to go, that's also absolutely fine. It will not be a disadvantage. But for me personally, I think there's no harm in it. You eventually find out anyway, so why not include it?
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. So thank you, Alex. Wenning, go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Paula. So, Miss, I just want to ask like this. If we are doing like a research or doing something like that. And in our motivational letter, we're talking about our research and how it links in the position that we want. What do you think about that? Is it good or not? Or we must not only talking about our research, but also talking about our experience to help our motivational letter becomes like more good. What do you think about that?
Um, I think if it makes sense, if you're applying to something where this research will be relevant for, you should for sure mention it and use it as a motivation. If it fits, it can be your only argument. In general, I would try to keep it a bit varied. So I would mention my research and maybe the context I've done it in, but then also try to find maybe another experience to match it, or your personal motivation for it, why you think this is such an interesting topic, for example. But of course, yes, including your research ambitions and your previous research done is a very good argument you can make.
All right. Okay, so maybe we would go towards the last two questions. So participants, if you have any more questions, just go ahead. Going once, twice. Okay, so now we close the open forum. Probably if you have further questions regarding how to create your CV or motivation letter, you could reach Lisa or maybe reach the CDC as well, and we would help you towards creating this. So let me share my screen once again. So if you could see it, now we are in the part wherein we would award a certificate. So in appreciation for her precious time and effort to come today to teach us, we would like to present a certificate of appreciation to Miss Lisa C. Pryor for being a speaker during the first session of the capacity building workshop on applying for opportunities held on June 12, 2021. So let's give Miss Lisa a round of applause. She really did well today. So no worries. Also, all the participants that stayed with us until the end will also be getting a certificate of participation. So thank you very much once again, Miss Lisa, for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. So just a few key takeaways for this event. What basically we learned is to always customize your curriculum vitae and motivations for any call, but we need to always remember that first, context matters. So the structure of your curriculum vitae and motivation will be determined if you're applying locally, internationally, and within the context of the organization that you're applying for. The second key takeaway is relevance. So before creating any of these things, you must always ask yourself, does this matter for the position that I am applying for? And always remember that less is always more. Then third key takeaway is uniqueness. Always add a personal touch to your applications because these things make you stand out. So also consider an innovative design to your curriculum vitae, but don't be too over the top with it. So fourth is the curriculum vitae is not the only part. We have the motivation letter, cover letter, letter of interest, whatever you call it. This can help your CV if you do not have a strong CV, and these things balance one another. So always remember to send them both, and always also consider that recommendation letters and the email that you would send is also important as well. And last but not the least is honesty. remember to sell yourself, but be honest. So we need to address the advertisement to get the opportunity that we're looking for. So with that, we wish everyone luck for all the things that you are applying for. Message us, consult us if you need any help. All right. So before we end our program, I would like to invite everyone to please open your cameras for a short picture taking for a remembrance. So maybe Yvette could take the screenshot. Could you take the screenshot, Yvette, for us? All right. So please tell us to smile so we know.
Can you stop sharing your screen? So
Oh,
the
sorry, sorry. Thank you for reminding me. There you go.
Wait.
Tell us when to smile. I can see everyone looking very good today. Thank you all for coming.
Can someone else take the
All right, all right. I'll
I can
be the
take
one.
it. I can
Okay,
take it and share
thank
with
you,
you, Yvette.
Jasmine.
Yeah. Okay, everyone smile. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, perfect.
Yes, okay. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming today. We would also like to invite everyone to attend the second session of the capacity building workshop under the same topic, applying for opportunities. So this will happen next week, June 19th, Saturday, same time. And we also have here the speaker for next week's session, Professor Fola. Thank you for coming today. So next week, we would talk about how to search for these opportunities in IFSA and in the international forest organizations. So I hope that you would register, and we would expect and we hope that you would be there. So that is it from the Capacity Development Commission. I am Paula, your moderator for today. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Lisa, once again. Thank you. Bye. Bye. Thanks for coming.